You got the news, big news, the kind that should have cracked you open. And you felt nothing, not sadness, not relief, not even confusion, just empty. And the worst part, you looked around at everyone else falling apart, and you wondered what was wrong with you. Maybe it was a funeral, and you didn't cry. Maybe it was your graduation, and everyone was celebrating, and you felt like you were watching it happen to someone else. Maybe someone told you they loved you, and your chest didn't move an inch. Here's what nobody tells you. That emptiness, that terrifying silence inside you during the moments that are supposed to matter most, that's not weakness. That's not coldness. According to psychology, that's your brain doing something extremely sophisticated. And the people who experience it most are often the ones who have felt too much for too long. So before you spend one more second thinking you're broken, stay with me. Because by the end of this video, you're going to understand something about yourself that most people never figure out. You are not broken. You are not cold. You are not a bad person. There is a precise psychological reason your mind goes quiet when life gets loudest. And today, we're going to find it. Welcome to Psychology Explained, where we uncover the hidden patterns behind the things you do, feel, and don't feel, so you can finally understand the person you've always been. Let's go. Imagine your emotions are a circuit board. Normal stress? A few switches flip. You feel it, you process it, you move on. But when something massive hits, something your brain has no category for, too many switches try to flip at once, and the system shuts down. This is called emotional numbing, and it's one of the most well-documented trauma responses in all of psychology. Your brain isn't being dramatic, it's being protective. There's a structure deep inside your brain called the amygdala. Think of it as your internal alarm system. When danger, emotional or physical, becomes too overwhelming, the prefrontal cortex steps in like an emergency override switch and says, "We cannot process this right now." Shutdown initiated. And just like that, you go still. You go quiet, not because you don't care, but because caring in that moment would have broken you. Here's the part that should make you pause. Studies show that people who experience emotional numbing during crisis events often have higher baseline emotional sensitivity than average. Read that again. You feel nothing because you feel everything. Your system didn't go cold because you're empty inside. It went cold because it was running too hot for too long. Think of a candle burning from both ends. It doesn't burn out because it had no flame. It burns out because it had too much of one. Psychologists call this dissociative buffering, when the mind creates a psychological distance between you and an event that would otherwise be unbearable. It's the same reason soldiers in combat sometimes describe feeling calm. The same reason abuse survivors go numb mid-incident. The same reason you sat dry-eyed at something that should have wrecked you. Your brain chose survival over sensation, and that choice kept you functioning. That's not nothing, that's extraordinary. But here's where it gets complicated. Once your brain learns this trick, once it figures out that shutting down works, it starts doing it more often than you actually need it to. And suddenly you're not just numb during the crisis. You're numb at the wedding, at the party, at the moment someone says, "I love you." And that is what we need to talk about next. Think about a dog that's been kicked. At first, it flinches at everything. Every sound, every sudden movement. But over time, it stops reacting. Not because it stopped caring, because it learned that reacting hurts. Psychologist John Bowlby, who developed attachment theory, found that humans do something remarkably similar. When your earliest emotional expressions, your crying, your fear, your need for comfort, were met with dismissal, punishment, or silence, your brain made a logical conclusion. Feeling equals risk. And so, brick by brick, you built a wall. Not out of cruelty, not out of arrogance, out of intelligence. Because somewhere along the way, being numb was safer than being vulnerable. This connects directly to what psychologists call avoidant emotional regulation, a pattern where the mind learns to suppress, deflect, and bypass emotional experience before it can even register consciously. You didn't decide to feel nothing. Your nervous system decided for you, based on the evidence it had collected over years. And the terrifying thing? By the time you're an adult, you might not even know the wall is there. You just know that other people cry at movies and you don't. You just know that breakups don't break you the way they seem to break everyone else. You just know that you've watched your own life like it was someone else's highlight reel. The wall protected you, but walls don't have doors. And somewhere behind it, buried under years of "I'm fine," there is a version of you that still knows how to feel everything. Psychologists have a name for what happens next. They call it alexithymia. And it's more common than you think. It's not a disorder. It's not a diagnosis that defines you. It's simply a state where a person has difficulty identifying and describing their own emotions. And studies suggest that nearly 1 in 10 people experience it at a significant level. So if you've ever sat across from someone who asked, "How are you feeling?" and genuinely had no answer, not because you were hiding something, but because you actually didn't know, this is why. Here's what makes it even more interesting. People with alexithymia don't lack emotions. The emotions are there, running underneath the surface like a river under ice. They just can't access them easily. The connection between the feeling and the language for that feeling gets disrupted somewhere in the brain. Neuroscientists have found that in people who experience chronic emotional numbing, the insula, the part of the brain responsible for body awareness and emotional recognition, shows significantly lower activity. Your brain isn't ignoring your emotions. It just stopped translating them. And this is where it gets deeply personal, because this doesn't happen randomly. It happens to people who grew up in environments where emotions were dangerous, where crying meant weakness, where anger meant punishment, where needing someone meant being a burden. Your brain, being the incredibly adaptive organ it is, simply rewired itself to protect you. It turned down the volume on your inner world so the outer world would hurt less. That rewiring saved you then, but now it's costing you something you can't quite name. Think about a submarine running in silent mode. All the systems are still working, the engine is running, the crew is alive, but everything is muffled, contained, operating below the surface so nothing from the outside can detect it. That's you. You are not an empty vessel. You're a submarine running silent, fully operational, fully feeling, just deeply submerged. And the question isn't whether you have emotions. The question is whether you feel safe enough to surface. Now here's the part most psychology videos skip over entirely. And it's the part that changes everything. Emotional numbness is not just a wound. It is also, quietly, a gift. People who have learned to regulate emotion through distance are often extraordinarily calm in chaos. They're the ones who hold it together when everyone else falls apart. They make clear decisions under pressure. They don't panic. They don't spiral. They function. And the people around them call it strength, call it stability, call it being a rock. Not knowing that the rock learned to be hard because softness once got it broken. Psychologist Susan David, in her research on emotional agility, describes this beautifully. She says that the people who have the most capacity for deep feeling are often the same people who have built the most sophisticated defenses against it. Your numbness isn't the opposite of depth, it's the proof of it. The wall exists because what's behind it matters enormously. You don't build walls around things that don't matter. But here's the truth you need to hear right now. You cannot live your whole life behind the glass, not because it's wrong, but because it's lonely. And somewhere inside you, you already know that. You felt it in the quiet moments, the 2 a.m. stillness where something unnamed aches. The way you sometimes watch other people laugh freely and feel a strange distance from it, like you're watching warmth through a window. That ache, that quiet longing to actually be inside your own life. That is not emptiness. That is your realist self, knocking. The neuroscience gives us hope here. Because the brain is not fixed. Neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire and rebuild neural pathways, means that the connections that were dimmed can be relit. Not all at once, not dramatically, but slowly, through safety, through consistency, through learning that vulnerability in the right places doesn't destroy you. Therapists who work with emotional numbing often use a technique called somatic experiencing, bringing attention back to physical sensations in the body as a doorway back into emotion. Because the body remembers what the mind is muted. Your hands know grief even when your eyes stay dry. The first step isn't forcing yourself to feel. It's giving yourself permission to be curious about what you feel. Not performing emotion for other people. Not breaking down to prove you're human. Just noticing. A tightness in the chest. A heaviness behind the eyes. a strange reluctance to leave a place or a conversation. These are not nothing. These are your emotions speaking the only language they have left after years of being told to be quiet. Listen to them. Not loudly, just gently, like you'd listen to someone who'd been silent for a very long time. So here's what I want you to sit with. You didn't choose this. You didn't become numb because something is fundamentally wrong with you. You became numb because something was wrong with what happened to you. And your mind loved you enough to protect you from it. That protection served you. And now slowly, you get to decide what comes next. Not all at once, just one honest moment at a time. Now before you go, I want to ask you something, and I genuinely want to know your answer. Think about the last major life event where you expected to feel something big and didn't. Was it a loss? A milestone? A relationship ending? Drop it in the comments. Just one word or one sentence. Because I promise you, when you read what other people write, you are going to feel a lot less alone in this. And if this video described you in a way that made you pause, share it with one person who you think has been running silent for too long. They need to hear this too. And if you want to understand yourself at this level every single week, subscribing takes 2 seconds. And it might be one of the most quietly important things you do today. Coming up next, we're going into something even deeper. We're talking about the people who are always there for everyone else, who never ask for help, who seem completely self-sufficient, and why, according to psychology, that pattern is almost never actually about strength. If that sounds familiar, if that sounds like someone you know or someone you are not going to want to miss it.